The hum of the fluorescent lights in courtroom 3B of the King County Courthouse was a dull, oppressive drone, a stark counterpoint to the tempest raging within me. I am Andy Sterling, and at 33, I was a man living a paradox. By day, I was a ghost in the machine, a cybersecurity ghost operative, the architect of digital espionage and counterintelligence for a covert government agency, my hands quietly pulling strings in the invisible, intricate web of global threats, the intricacies of secure networks, the psychological profiles of sophisticated adversaries, the art of data interception. These were the languages I spoke fluently. My workspace, a labyrinth of servers and screens deep within a fortified, undisclosed facility, was my sanctuary, a place where logic reigned supreme and emotional noise was a weakness to be purged. By night, or what was left of it, I was simply Dad to Leo, my bright-eyed 12-year-old, and Ella, my spirited 9-year-old, their laughter the only genuine melody left in my fractured world. We lived in a quiet, unassuming suburb of Seattle, a sanctuary that, until recently, I'd believed was impenetrable. Across the sterile oak table, Serafina, my soon-to-be ex-wife, sat poised, her features a mask of aggrieved innocence. Her blonde hair, meticulously coiffed, framed a face that had once captivated me, a visage of alluring confidence and sharp intellect. But now, under the harsh, unforgiving glare of judicial scrutiny, that very same face merely registered as a chillingly perfected facade, a veneer of victimhood designed to manipulate. Beside her, her attorney, Maxwell Thorney, a man whose reputation as a pitiless shark in family law circles was not merely well-earned, but legendary, smirked with an almost palpable arrogance, a predatory gleam in his cold, calculating eyes. He had every reason to be confident, for on paper, in the conventional narrative of divorce, Serafina had me cornered. She wanted everything. The sprawling craftsman-style house, nestled amongst ancient cedars, its every beam a testament to our shared dreams. She wanted the lion's share of my meticulously built savings. Years of disciplined investment now dangled as a prize. She demanded a crippling amount of alimony, a perpetual financial tether to a past I desperately needed to sever. And, most agonizingly, she sought primary custody of our children, a move designed, I was certain, not out of maternal devotion, but as a final, crushing blow to my spirit and a strategic leverage point for future demands. Her narrative, spun with practiced ease and refined by Thorne's legal prowess, painted me as an absent, emotionally detached workaholic, too consumed by my mysterious, unnamed profession to be a fit parent. And, for the casual observer, for the judge, for anyone who didn't know the depths of my reality, it was a tragically convincing performance. But Thorne, with all his sharp suits and sharper rhetoric, and more importantly, Serafina, with her perfected tears and feigned fragility, had no idea about the true nature of my profession or the profound, almost existential training it had etched into my very being. They didn't know that my work wasn't just a job. It was a mindset, a way of life that had honed my senses to an almost preternatural degree. I specialized in unraveling the most complex digital conspiracies, in mapping hidden networks of deceit that span continents, in anticipating the moves of adversaries who believed themselves invisible, cloaked in layers of encryption and obfuscation. My analytical mind, accustomed to sifting through terabytes of fragmented data to construct a cohesive picture of truth, a narrative built on irrefutable facts, had been meticulously, brutally applied to the unraveling of my own personal life. And what I had found, what I held locked away in the fortress of my knowledge, was far more damning, far more sinister than simple infidelity. It was a calculated, cold-blooded plot, a betrayal that went to the very core of who I was and who I was fighting to protect. Our marriage had once been a vibrant tapestry, woven with threads of shared dreams and a fierce, undeniable passion that felt like a force of nature. I had met Serafina during my early days in the agency, before the layers of secrecy and the weight of my responsibilities had fully calcified around my soul, before the world of shadows had truly claimed me. She was a marketing executive then, radiant and ambitious, her laughter a bright, effervescent counterpoint to the quiet intensity of my burgeoning career. We fell in love with a whirlwind intensity, marrying within a year, swept away by the intoxicating promise of a perfect future, a future that seemed to stretch out, boundless and bright, before us. Leo and Ella followed, two sparkling jewels, their arrival deepening the bond, adding new dimensions of joy and purpose to a life that seemed, for a time, utterly charmed, almost too perfect to be real. But as my career deepened, as the demands of my highly classified work grew more consuming, as the threats I tracked became more insidious and pervasive, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift began in our home. The late nights I spent tracking state-sponsored hackers or dismantling global crime syndicates became less about patriotic duty and more about a quiet, desperate escape from a growing emptiness in my personal life. Serafina, once understanding and supportive, grew increasingly distant, her own ambition seeming to swell, to dwarf our shared life, to eclipse the very notion of partnership. Our conversations became clipped, perfunctory, devoid of genuine connection. The spontaneity that had once defined us, the easy laughter and shared dreams, withered, replaced by a rigid schedule of obligations and thinly veiled resentments that hummed beneath the surface of polite conversation. She began traveling more frequently for work, her phone a constant, vibrating companion she guarded with an almost religious fervor, its screen often turned away from my gaze. Her excuses for her increasing unavailability, for the unfamiliar, luxurious expenses that began appearing on our joint accounts, for the subtle, almost imperceptible scent of another man's expensive cologne that occasionally clung to her clothes, grew increasingly elaborate, increasingly brittle, like a house of cards built on shifting sand. "You're paranoid, Andy," she'd sigh, her voice laced with a weary exasperation that was more dismissive than empathetic. Whenever I dared to voice a nascent concern, a fleeting doubt that flickered into my conscious thought. "It's your job, isn't it? Always looking for enemies. You're bringing that darkness home." Her words were a chilling echo of the very sentiment my old handler, a grizzled veteran named Miller, used to warn us about in training. The enemy thinks they have the advantage. You intend to change that. But don't let the job consume you, Sterling. The lines can blur. Serafina was right in one sense. My profession had made me suspicious, by nature, a default setting for survival in a world of deception. But what she failed to understand was that it had also trained me to recognize the subtle cadences of a lie, the almost imperceptible tale of a carefully constructed deception, the telltale flicker in the eyes of a person hiding something profound. My gut, honed by years of deciphering complex patterns of human behavior, screamed that something was profoundly wrong, a discordant note in the symphony of our lives. The turning point came 6 months ago. I was embedded deep within a highly sensitive operation, remotely coordinating a multi-agency takedown of a sophisticated dark web network responsible for horrific child exploitation. The hours were brutal, stretched thin across time zones, the stakes unimaginably high. The images I saw burned into my memory. I hadn't seen my children in weeks, communicating only through heavily encrypted video calls, their innocent, loving faces, a painful reminder of the life I was fighting, quite literally, to preserve. Serafina's calls grew even less frequent, her voice colder, more abstracted, her answers evasive. Then, a single, innocuous detail snagged in my subconscious like a burr on a wool jacket. A casual mention during a brief, stilted conversation that she was taking the kids to her mother's place in Richmond, Virginia, for the weekend. "Bad reception there," she'd added, almost as an afterthought, a hurried addendum to avoid further conversation. Her mother, bless her heart, lived in the very heart of downtown Richmond, a bustling urban center. The reception there was, notoriously, perfect. That was the spark, the tiny, almost invisible thread that, to my trained eye, began to unravel the entire tapestry of lies she had meticulously woven. My gut, honed by years of deciphering complex patterns of deception, screamed that something was profoundly, terrifyingly wrong. I remembered Miller's gruff, wise words. "Trust your instincts, Sterling. They're usually smarter than your logic, especially when it comes to the human element." I didn't act immediately. I couldn't. My mission, my oath, took precedence. The lives of vulnerable children depended on my focus. But a new, intensely personal operation began to form in the tactical theater of my mind, a parallel mission that would run concurrently with my official duties. 3 days later, with the dark web network dismantled and the perpetrators apprehended, their digital empires in ruins, Miller offered me a much-needed leave. "Go home, Sterling," he'd urged, his voice gruff but kind, recognizing the toll the recent operation had taken. "You've earned it. Spend time with your family." "I need to prepare first, sir," I responded, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, concealing the maelstrom brewing beneath the surface of my carefully maintained calm. "The enemy thinks they have the advantage. I intend to change that. Every advantage, every detail, my family is not a vulnerability." Instead of returning home directly, I flew to a discreet, agency-vetted safe house in a neighboring state, a nondescript suburban rental with high-speed internet and secure comms. From there, I initiated my own, highly personal counterintelligence operation. I leveraged my skills not for national security, but for the security of my own fragile, crumbling world. Months earlier, as our marriage began its slow, agonizing death spiral, a nascent suspicion, a flicker of doubt, had led me to install a series of undetectable, military-grade security devices throughout our home. Not just discrete cameras hidden in smoke detectors and alarm clocks, but sophisticated network sniffers that captured every byte of data, acoustic sensors that picked up whispers, and environmental monitors that tracked patterns of occupancy. I had justified it to myself as a general security measure, given the nature of my work, a prudent precaution against external threats from those who might try to leverage my personal life against my professional one. Now, it was repurposed, redirected, aimed squarely at the very heart of my personal life, a grim, necessary task. I meticulously reviewed the raw data streams, filtering out the noise, searching for anomalies in the vast sea of information. The initial findings were subtle, almost too subtle for an untrained eye. Patterns of movement that didn't align with her stated whereabouts, Wi-Fi usage that indicated multiple, unauthorized devices logging onto our home network, faint audio signatures of unfamiliar male voices, then the visual feed. The high-definition feed from the bedroom camera, its existence known only to me, a silent, invisible witness. It showed, in stark, undeniable detail, a man's expensive, custom-tailored suit jacket slung casually over my reading chair, the faint glint of a luxury watch peeking from its cuff. The timestamp, precise to the second, 2:01, 4 a.m. Pacific Street, Andert time. My stomach churned, a cold dread seeping into my veins. Then, a few moments later, Serafina entered the frame, her face flushed, a glass of wine from our wedding crystal, the set reserved for special occasions shelled loosely in her hand. Beside her, a man I had never seen before. He was handsome, impeccably dressed, with an air of practiced charm and an unsettling familiarity. They were laughing, their voices low and intimate, the sound a corrosive acid in my ears, burning away the last vestiges of hope. I watched, stone-faced, as the stranger kissed my wife, the woman I had vowed to protect, to cherish, to build a life with, to share every secret with. The woman who had given me 2 beautiful children. My breath hitched, a physical pain in my chest, more acute than any combat wound, a crushing weight of betrayal. I didn't turn away when they moved to the bed. My bed, the sanctity of our shared space, violated. Instead, my tactical mind, dispassionately, clinically, continued to record everything. Every whispered word, every intimate gesture, every devastating confirmation of the betrayal. It wasn't about rage, not yet, not then. It was about evidence, irrefutable, undeniable evidence. But the infidelity was just the prelude, a sickening overture to a far more elaborate, chilling symphony of deception. As I dug deeper, accessing her encrypted communications, cracking her personal devices, following her digital breadcrumbs, the true horror of her deception began to unfold. The man was not just a lover. He was Julian Vance, a notorious corporate raider, whispered about in clandestine circles for his ruthless tactics, his insatiable greed, and his questionable ethics. He was known for exploiting vulnerabilities, not just in companies and their balance sheets, but in people's lives, their trust, their loyalties. And Serafina, it seemed, was his latest mark. Or, perhaps, his eager, willing accomplice. Their conversations, raw and unfiltered, filled with contemptuous whispers and arrogant laughter, revealed a chilling, meticulously crafted plot. Serafina wasn't just having an affair. She was actively conspiring with Vance to systematically strip me of my assets, leveraging my classified work to explain my erratic schedule and perceived detachment to the public, to the court, to anyone who might ask questions. They discussed draining our joint accounts, forging my signature on financial documents to secure loans and credit lines, even moving significant sums into untraceable offshore accounts and cryptocurrency wallets. She was building a war chest, a financial fortress for her new life with Vance, intending to leave me utterly bankrupt, financially crippled, unable to pursue my profession, unable to rebuild my life, unable to fight back. But the most gut-wrenching revelation came in a series of text messages and recorded conversations discussing the children. Vance, with his predatory charm, seemed to have wormed his way into their lives, offering lavish gifts, taking them on expensive outings while I was away. Serafina, in her blind infatuation, in her chilling disregard for their well-being, saw nothing wrong with this, even dismissing my previous vague attempts to limit their exposure to unfamiliar adults. Her messages revealed a chilling disregard for their emotional and physical safety, prioritizing her new relationship and financial gain over the stability and security of our children. "They're fine, Julian," one text read, her words chillingly casual. "Andy's too preoccupied with his secret squirrel stuff to notice anyway. Besides, they love the attention." The words were a knife twisting in my gut, a slow, agonizing turn that shredded my soul. My children, Leo and Ella, unwitting pawns in her cruel, mercenary game. My secret squirrel stuff, the very work that protected our nation, that kept countless families safe, was being weaponized against me, twisted into a convenient, despicable excuse for her blatant, unforgivable deceit. The discovery, the raw, undeniable truth of her betrayal, consumed me, transforming grief into a cold, hard resolve. The divorce proceedings began swiftly upon my return to Seattle, initiated by Serafina, of course. She moved out, taking the children with her, fabricating a story about my abusive tendencies and unstable mental state due to my demanding, secretive job. Thorne, her lawyer, submitted a barrage of motions: immediate sole custody, maximum child support, significant spousal support, and a complete claim to our marital assets, including the house and a substantial portion of my retirement fund. His opening statements in court were a brutal assault on my character, delivered with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of an assassin. He painted me as an absent father, a detached husband, a man whose clandestine life made him unfit for conventional fatherhood. Mr. Sterling's work, shrouded in impenetrable secrecy, prevents him from providing the stability and consistent presence these children desperately need and deserve. Thorne intoned, his voice dripping with condescension, with a practiced pity that made my skin crawl. He cannot even disclose the precise nature of his employment, a testament to his elusive and frankly concerning lifestyle. My client, Serafina Sterling, has been the sole consistent caregiver, the emotional anchor for these children, enduring years of neglect and abandonment while Mr. Sterling pursued his phantom duties. He used the term phantom duties with a sneer, implying something illicit or even imaginary. I sat there, outwardly calm, my face a mask of impenetrable composure, every muscle in my body screaming for release, for the truth to be unleashed. I listened to his carefully constructed lies, to Serafina's tearful, fabricated testimony about my coldness and emotional unavailability, her voice catching just so, eliciting sympathetic glances from the gallery. The judge, a stern but fair woman named Judge Eleanor Vance, no relation to Julian Vance, a grim irony I noted, known for her meticulous attention to detail and her unwavering adherence to legal procedure, listened patiently, her gaze often resting on me, an unreadable, almost calculating expression on her face. I knew what she saw, a man accused, without counter-argument, of being a neglectful husband and father, his silence a seeming admission of guilt. My own attorney, a seasoned family lawyer named Sarah Chen, looked increasingly worried with each passing day. She knew the broad strokes of my job, enough to understand why I couldn't provide a conventional defense. why I couldn't simply present my security clearance and the nature of my classified work. Andy, she'd pleaded in chambers, her voice hushed, strained. You need to give me something. Anything that counters this narrative, they're shredding you. They're making you out to be a ghost, and the judge won't rule for a ghost. I have something, Sarah, I'd replied, my voice low, steady, a quiet assurance in my tone. Something irrefutable, something that changes everything, but it's a one-shot deal. We wait for the right moment. The moment they are most confident, most arrogant in their perceived victory. I had withheld the true depth and nature of my evidence, even from her, knowing the sheer magnitude of it would be almost unbelievable without the perfect context, the perfect, dramatic delivery. It was a calculated risk, but one born of necessity and a lifetime of strategic thinking. The trial dragged on for what felt like an eternity, weeks blurring into a slow, agonizing drip of half-truths and outright fabrications. Serafina reveled in the drama, basking in the perceived sympathy of the court, her performance Oscar-worthy, her eyes occasionally flicking towards me, a subtle, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. Vance even made a brief, carefully orchestrated appearance, a picture of benevolent concern and unwavering support, testifying to Serafina's stability and devotion to her children, his eyes subtly, provocatively, meeting mine across the courtroom, a silent, arrogant challenge that fueled my quiet fury. I felt a surge of primal rage but suppressed it, a controlled burn beneath my skin, my gaze unwavering, my face a mask of impenetrable calm, waiting. Finally, the day of closing arguments arrived, the culmination of weeks of emotional torment. Thorne delivered a scathing summation, his voice echoing with righteous indignation, filling the courtroom with his carefully crafted lies. He painted Serafina as a wronged woman, a devoted mother, seeking only justice and the protection of her children from a detached, shadowy figure. He ended with a flourish, demanding full custody, the house, and a financial settlement that would have left me utterly bankrupt, stripped of my dignity, unable to pursue my profession, unable to rebuild my life, unable to fight back. This court, he concluded, his voice booming, must protect this loving mother and her innocent children from a life of uncertainty and neglect. Then it was our turn. Sarah, visibly nervous, her hands clutching her notes, began her closing statement, her voice lacking the practiced gravitas of Thorne's. She focused on my love for the children, on my quiet dedication, hinting at the classified nature of my work as a source of national service, not dereliction. But it was a weak defense, a mere whisper against the avalanche of Thorne's accusations. She wrapped up, her shoulders slumping slightly, resigned to what seemed like an inevitable defeat. As she concluded, I leaned over, a small black USB drive, no larger than my thumb, clutched in my palm, feeling like a live wire. Your Honor, I addressed the judge, my voice cutting through the hushed courtroom, steady and resonant, carrying the weight of unvarnished truth. If I may, before my attorney rests, I have one final piece of evidence, a single document, or rather a compilation, that I believe will shed a different light on this case, a light that cannot be denied. Thorne immediately shot to his feet, his face contorted in a sneer of disbelief and indignation. Objection! Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Mr. Sterling has had ample opportunity to present evidence. This is a clear attempt at a last-minute theatrical stunt designed to prejudice the court and prolong these proceedings unnecessarily. His voice was loud, agitated, his usual composure cracking. I assure the court, Mr. Thorne, I said, my gaze fixed on the judge, my voice unwavering, unyielding. This is no stunt. It is the unadulterated truth, a culmination of months of meticulous data collection. And it is the only piece of evidence that truly encapsulates the reality of this situation and the absolute urgent necessity of my children's protection. The judge, her eyes narrowed, piercing, considered me for a long moment. My calm resolve, my almost unnerving composure in the face of Thorne's bluster must have intrigued her. Her years on the bench had taught her to recognize desperation, and this was not it. This was something else. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice slow and deliberate, a weighty pause before each word. I will allow this, but it had better be substantial. Approach the bench. I strode forward, the USB drive feeling like a live wire in my hand, humming with the power of revelation. Sarah, bewildered but trusting, simply handed me a tablet she had brought for basic presentations. I plugged the drive in, bypassing the courtroom's main system with a few swift practice taps on the tablet screen, connecting directly to the large monitor that displayed evidence to the judge and jury box. The screen flickered to life. The first image flashed onto the screen, a high-resolution still from the home security camera. Serafina and Julian Vance, their faces clear, unmistakable, caught in a shared moment of laughter. Wine glasses in hand, intimately close, in my living room at 2:14 a.m. The time stamp was undeniably precise. A collective gasp, audible and sharp, rippled through the hushed courtroom. Serafina's face went utterly ashen, a sickly green hue replacing her carefully applied makeup, her composure shattering instantly, irrevocably. Thorne looked like he'd been hit by a truck, his jaw hanging slack, his eyes wide with horror. Exhibit A, I continued, my voice measured, unperturbed by the sudden explosion of murmurs, irrefutable proof of marital infidelity captured within our marital residence, directly contradicting Miss Sterling's sworn testimony regarding her whereabouts and conduct. Next, the screen transitioned, smoothly, professionally, to a series of intercepted financial transactions. Dates, amounts, account numbers, routing information, all laid bare. Large sums, methodically siphoned from our joint accounts into various shell corporations and offshore entities in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, all linked directly to Julian Vance and his known aliases. The paper trail, digital and undeniable, unfolded before the court's horrified gaze. Exhibit B, I stated, my voice now laced with a cold, precise anger that pierced through the court's shocked silence. A comprehensive forensic analysis detailing the systematic embezzlement and attempted grand larceny against marital assets, meticulously orchestrated by Miss Sterling and Mr. Julian Vance, leveraging fraudulent documents and deceptive financial maneuvers. The air in the courtroom grew thick with tension, with the palpable weight of impending doom. The judge's expression, previously stern but neutral, hardened into one of cold, righteous fury. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing as she took in the damning figures, her hand gripping her pen. The gravity of the situation was no longer about a divorce. It was about outright criminality. Then came the audio. A recording, crystal clear, unedited, of Serafina and Vance discussing the plan. Not just the money, but how to discredit me, how to ensure I lost everything, how to isolate me from my children. Serafina's voice, devoid of warmth, chillingly detached as she agreed to Vance's increasingly disturbing suggestions. And then, the most gut-wrenching part, Vance suggesting ways to manipulate Leo and Ella against me, to use them as leverage, to turn them into unwilling participants in their scheme. They'll be easy, Vance's voice sneered in the recording. Kids are easily swayed by gifts. We'll make sure they blame Andy for everything. And Serafina's chillingly casual agreement, exactly. Andy's too wrapped up in his classified world to notice anyway. It'll be a clean break. Exhibit C, I concluded, my voice now edged with a controlled fury that cut through the silence like a scalpel. Further evidence of conspiracy to defraud, attempted fraud, and, most critically, a blatant disregard for the emotional and psychological well-being of our children, actively involving them in a scheme of parental alienation and financial exploitation, using them as pawns in a criminal enterprise. I paused, letting the profound silence hang heavy, broken only by the sound of Serafina's strangled gasp. Her eyes, wide and terrified, darted around the room, finally locking onto mine, filled with a raw, unadulterated hatred, a desperate, cornered animal. Your Honor, Thorne finally stammered, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead, his voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to his earlier bombast. This is illegally obtained evidence. It's inadmissible. This is an invasion of privacy, a fabrication. On the contrary, Mr. Thorne, I interjected, my voice unwavering, steady as a laser. As a cybersecurity expert and a trained intelligence operative, I am keenly aware of the legal parameters surrounding digital evidence. All surveillance was conducted on my property, within the confines of my marital home, of which I was a legal resident and owner. Furthermore, the evidence reveals not just marital misconduct, but profound, actionable criminal activity, including wire fraud, grand larceny, conspiracy to defraud, and, potentially, child endangerment and exploitation. These are not merely civil matters, Your Honor. They are matters of criminal justice. As if on cue, summoned by the sheer weight of the unveiled truth, the courtroom doors burst open. Not in a dramatic storm, but with a swift, purposeful efficiency that nevertheless sent a palpable shockwave through the room, making dozens of heads snap towards the sound. Two plainclothes detectives, their faces grim and determined, followed by a uniformed officer, entered, their eyes immediately scanning the room, locking onto Serafina and Vance. One of them, a stern-faced woman with an air of unyielding authority, held up a badge. "Detective Ramirez, Seattle PD," she announced, her voice calm but commanding, cutting through the stunned silence. "We have an active warrant for the arrest of Serafina Sterling and Julian Vance on charges of wire fraud, grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit child endangerment. We've been following Mr. Sterling's lead based on preliminary, classified information he provided to our cybercrimes unit months ago. This court evidence simply sealed the deal, confirming every detail we had previously collected." Serafina let out a choked cry, a strangled, primal sound, her face contorting in a mixture of terror and disbelief, her perfect facade utterly shattered. Vance, who had been sitting smugly in the gallery, his face now a mask of pure panic, tried to melt into the crowd, to slip away unnoticed, but the uniformed officer moved with a speed and precision that belied his size, blocking his exit, his hand firmly on Vance's shoulder. "You knew!" Serafina shrieked, her voice raw, guttural, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at me, tears streaming down her face, no longer feigned but genuine, born of fear. "You set me up, you bastard, you monster!" "No, Serafina," I said, my voice quiet, almost mournful, the raw, unvarnished emotion finally breaking through my carefully maintained composure. "You set yourself up. I just documented it. Every step of the way." The judge, her face a thundercloud of controlled fury, her gavel hitting the desk with a sharp, resounding crack, restored order, though her voice vibrated with undisguised contempt for the accused. "Order! Order in the court! Detective, proceed with the arrests. As for this divorce case, given the overwhelming, compelling, and utterly damning evidence of criminal activity presented by Mr. Price Sterling, corroborated by the Seattle Police Department, the petition for divorce is granted with immediate effect. Custody of the minor children, Leo and Ella Sterling, is hereby awarded solely to Mr. Andy Sterling with all rights, responsibilities, and decision-making authority. All claims for spousal support and shared marital assets by Ms. Sterling are denied. Furthermore, a permanent restraining order is issued, prohibiting Ms. Sterling from any contact, direct or indirect, with Mr. Sterling or the children, save for what is arranged through the court and supervised by a legal guardian, pending the absolute and final outcome of the criminal investigation." Her gaze, as she pronounced the final sentence, was chillingly direct, a complete dismissal of Serafina's very existence. As Serafina was led away in handcuffs, her carefully constructed facade utterly crumbled, replaced by raw, screaming fury, then desperate, tearful pleas that faded into the hallway. I watched impassively. Vance, too, was apprehended, his arrogant smirk replaced by a look of stunned disbelief and utter defeat as the handcuffs clicked into place behind his back. The courtroom, once a stage for her deceit, had become the scene of her complete and utter downfall, a swift and brutal act of justice. In the days and weeks that followed, the legal and emotional cleanup was immense, a monumental task of sifting through the wreckage. The criminal investigation moved swiftly, fueled by the comprehensive digital evidence I had provided and the police's own parallel findings. The intricate web of Vance's corporate fraud and Serafina's complicity unraveled, revealing a pattern of manipulation and exploitation that extended far beyond my own case. Ensnaring other victims, they faced multiple severe charges, and the evidence I had meticulously collected corroborated by the detective's own parallel investigation, was unassailable, ensuring their prolonged incarceration. Life with Leo and Ella began anew. The initial shock for them was profound, a jarring shift in their young, carefully constructed worlds. It was difficult to explain the depths of their mother's betrayal, to reconcile the seemingly loving parent they thought they knew with the person who had so casually endangered their lives and their future. But I was honest, to the extent that I could be, protecting them from the most graphic, disturbing details, but emphasizing the importance of truth, trust, and the unyielding strength of our new, smaller but stronger family unit. We started family therapy, a safe, compassionate space for them to process their anger, their confusion, their profound sense of loss, and to begin the long, arduous journey of healing. Their therapist, Dr. Evelyn Reed, a kind, wise woman with empathetic eyes, became another anchor for us. My agency was, understandably, concerned by the public exposure of my methods, even if indirectly. The incident drew unwanted attention, a spotlight on the usually shadowy world I inhabited. But Miller, my steadfast mentor, defended me fiercely in the clandestine internal reviews. Sterling's actions, while unorthodox and born of intensely personal necessity, ultimately served a greater good, leading to the apprehension of a highly dangerous individual who was actively preying on innocent families and engaging in large-scale fraud. His intel was impeccable, his methods sound, and his loyalty to family, a testament to his character. My career remarkably emerged not just intact, but with a new, unspoken respect from my peers, a quiet acknowledgement of the brutal, personal battle I had fought and won. I was no longer just a cybersecurity ghost. I was a man who had faced the enemy in his own home and emerged victorious, protecting his family with the same unwavering dedication he gave to his country. We moved not far, just across the Sound, to a quieter, more secluded community on Bainbridge Island, enough to shed the ghost of the old house and its tainted memories. Our new home, smaller and cozier, nestled among towering fir trees, felt truly ours, a fresh start. I scaled back my work, transitioning to a less demanding advisory role within the agency, prioritizing my children, finding a healthier, more sustainable balance between duty and fatherhood. I learned to cook, to really listen, to just be present in their lives, without the constant undercurrent of suspicion and betrayal that had poisoned our past. Leo, initially withdrawn, began to open up, finding solace in advanced programming and robotics, his analytical mind a quieter echo of my own, his bright curiosity a balm to my soul. Ella, resilient and fiercely protective of her brother, channeled her emotions into vibrant art, her canvases a burst of color and raw emotion, a testament to her healing spirit. I never spoke to Serafina again. She was convicted, serving a substantial sentence for her crimes, her appeals exhausted, her fate sealed. Vance, too, faced justice, his empire crumbling, his name synonymous with disgrace. Their names became mere footnotes in the grim annals of criminal court reports, fading into the forgotten echoes of public memory. The silence from them was, finally, the truest peace, a calm that settled deep within my bones, a quiet victory. Through this harrowing journey, I learned that betrayal, however profound, does not have to define you. It is a wound, yes, deep and painful, leaving indelible scars. But it is also a crucible, forging an inner strength you never knew you possessed. I had believed myself impenetrable, a fortress of logic and skill, capable of defending against any external threat. But the greatest threat had come from within, from the very person I had vowed to protect, from the heart of my own home. The true lesson was not just about protecting data or national secrets or even financial assets. It was about protecting the soul, the sanctity of family, the inherent trust that forms the bedrock of our lives. It was about facing the most painful truths, even when they came from the ones you loved, and rising above them. The paper I handed the judge that day wasn't just evidence of a crime. It was a testament to truth, to accountability, and to the unwavering, ferocious love a father has for his children. It was the moment I stopped being just a ghost in the machine, a shadow operative, and became truly an architect of my own destiny, building a future not on the ruins of betrayal, but on the unshakable foundation of honesty, resilience, and unconditional love. My ex-wife had demanded everything, had sought to strip me bare. But in the end, I walked away with the only things that truly mattered: my children, my integrity, and a profound, hard-won peace that radiated from the core of my being. It was the only victory that ever mattered.